Welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode, where we talk about media related to thee. On this special Alt Mode, I get to sit down with voice actor and now author Rob Paulsen. We talk about his new book that's coming out, his career, and maybe a little hockey. Enjoy. Welcome to Transmissions Alt Mode. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm here solo for this special podcast. The other guys really wanted to make it for this, but unfortunately, the only time we had to do this interview was in the middle of the workday. And my work schedule is a little bit more flexible than the other guys, and they couldn't make it. But they did get a couple questions that I was able to ask. I'm sure, particularly Daryl's, but I think I called out both of them when I asked their questions. But anyway, on to actually why I am so excited to be talking with you guys. We have a very special guest on this episode. He has been 2 different Ninja Turtles, a lab mouse, the one that wears the pants in the Warner household, and of particular interest to our audience, a couple Aerobots. Releasing on October 8th is his book, Voice Lessons, How a Couple of Ninja Turtles, Pinky, and an Animaniac Saved My Life, which tells the story of his battle with throat cancer and how it changed his life. I'm very happy to welcome Rob Paulsen to the special Transmissions Alt Mode. Thanks, Rob, for coming on.
Hey, buddy. Not at all, Jeremy. Thank you for lowering your podcast standards and having me on. It's a pleasure.
We have such low standards, but you're like... Yeah. You know, you've blown away. You know, we've had many voice actors on, and you in particular are a bucket list for me. So this is...
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you very much. That is very kind of you, honestly. I am a very fortunate fellow for many reasons, not the least of which is I've reached a point in my career where nice younger people like you and others are even remotely interested in what I do. And don't get me wrong, it's not false modesty. I'm good at my job, and I'm better at my job today than I was yesterday. I hope that's what we all try to do. But, look, I don't draw them and I don't write them. Animation and celebrity, quote unquote, with respect to animation is a bit of a different animal. I am now becoming more well-known sort of on the street or in polite company as a result of things like this, podcasts, and just having been around long enough, I think that people, by process of elimination, say, oh, we haven't talked to him yet. He's been around. Let's talk to him. But it turns out that my job, even though it's brought enormous joy to me, in addition to my paycheck, it brings, I would argue, immeasurable joy to millions of others. And so when I meet people like you and others, in passing, or people find out who I am in a social situation, I got to tell you, man, all it does is freak them out in the most gloriously happy way. I have a superpower. All I have to do is say, "Narf," and people do what I hope you're doing right now. It kind of elevates their pulse, and they smile, and sometimes they blush, and so it's pretty cool, man, and I'm very grateful to be here.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And kind of going in on that, my first question is, talking about, since you make your living on your voice, getting the cancer diagnosis must have been terrifying. But I've read an interview you recently gave that said during your treatment, you got a lot of encouragement from families that, like, you've encouraged years before, just through, your voice talents and calling and just, kind of trying to cheer a kid up. And you said
Absolutely.
that like you got that back from them. Can you talk about what that meant to you?
That is precisely right, and I'm so glad you heard that, because that's exactly what I want the book to convey. The book, as you mentioned, is called Voice Lessons, and it's about that. That is, although the title reflects precisely what the book is about, and it sounds silly, but it's not. There's no mystery, and that's precisely what they were, Jeremy. Lessons. As you can imagine, the children and their parents who've gone through impossible circumstances, I'm sure many of your listeners know families whose children have been affected by many diabolical diseases, cancer included. And I have had the privilege, and it is nothing short of that, to meet families in very intimate circumstances, often when their children were fixing to leave, and the only way they were going to leave the hospital was in the body bag. And so to be let in, even through Raphael or Donatello or Pinky or Yakko or Carl Wheezer or Mighty Max or Throttle from Biker Mice, from you name it, man, to be let in, to talk to their children, because that is what's going to brighten their day. Holy crap. How on earth do we quantify that compliment and that gift? And then years and years later, when many of these children haven't survived and their parents still keep in contact with me, I had nothing short of profiles and courage on how to deal with my own time in the cancer cage. And the treatment for throat cancer, though it's very effective, is, to be sure, pretty brutal, for obvious reasons. We kiss our friends, we talk, we swallow, we drink, we eat with our mouths and our throats. And when they torch it to kill the cancer, there's unfortunately some good tissue, healthy tissue, that gets beat up a little bit along the way. So it's pretty uncomfortable. And the times that I would start feeling sorry for myself, I would remember my little friends Chad, or my little friends Jordy, or my little friends Rebecca, or my little friends Timothy, or Kyle, or on and on and on, Logan, you name it, and their parents. And they didn't forget Yakko. They probably forgot me, and it's not about me. And again, it's not false modesty. It is not about me. It's about the characters. So now I had this glorious experience, and nice people like you give me the opportunity to talk to people about how deeply these characters connect with people. Now, before you and some of your listeners might say, duh, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. I live in kind of a creative bubble out here in Los Angeles. Yeah. And that is to say, I and my friends, and in your context, Frank Welker, Peter Cullen, Chris Latta, Arthur Burghardt, Michael Bell, Jack Angel, BJ Ward, we all go to work every day, work with people we choose to be our personal friends, laugh our asses off, have a blast. We know that people love Transformers, and et cetera, et cetera. But until the advent of Transformers conventions and Comic-Con and all these other places that I go now to, I attend, 10, 15 of them a year. I swear to God, Jeremy, I did not know the extent to which people, even people who weren't, thank God, suffering from terminal diseases, mm-hmm. embraced all these characters.
Yeah, and we've heard that from like people like Frank or like Peter Cullen, that like latchkey kids were like, this was the father figure in my life, and it's just like on the acting side, I guess until the conventions, you just never heard that feedback.
That is precisely true. And all of us. I've known Peter for 30 years. I met Peter on Transformers, but then we ended up doing a show together called Rude Dog and the Dweebs. And Welker was on that. Yeah. I was on that. Dave Coulier was on that. I mean, an incredible cast of people. And, we had a blast and went home and went to work. And the same places that I've been frequenting for the last 30 years now know who I am. And every time I walk into the same Starbucks I went to 20 years ago, they go, oh, my God, that Pinky's here. And people will walk up and say, I'm sorry, Mr. Paulsen, but if it's not too much trouble. And I said, hello, nurse. And they freak out.
Yeah.
And they've seen me going in there going, hi, Rob, the usual? Yeah, it's usual. But now they know Rob, quote unquote, is Pinky, is Slingshot, is Air Raid, is Snow Job from G.I. Joe, is Yakko, is Pinky, is Dr. Scratch and Sniff, and the same thing with Welker. And so it's a totally different animal, but the huge, beautiful side effect is what you and I are talking about today. And so all of these people have not only given me this really wonderful aspect of my career that I never knew, and it's fired me up for the last act of my life, but I got impossibly wonderful lessons to help me in my own cancer experience, and I am fine now. I'm different because you can't go through it and not be. It doesn't necessarily have to be bad. Rob 2.0 is a little different. I've lost 50 pounds. I've gained back about 15, so I don't look the same. But I'm back doing Animaniacs and Pinky and the Brain for Hulu next year, and nobody's had a question about my voice. And frankly, that is what everybody likes. So I'm fine with that. And I know I'm rambling, but when you give me the opportunity to tell my story, I don't want to miss a beat, because the worst thing I can do is get back in my car after talking to this nice guy, Jeremy, and go, oh shit, I forgot to tell him this, because it's a huge deal to me, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And one thing that I really enjoy about you is you're very active on like social media with your fans. And then I got to meet you at C2E2 this year, and just watching you interact with fans, and you seem to be having as much fun as everyone else.
Oh my God, you got that right. In fact, I had another. Well, you saw it happen, and I think you know by now that the interest and the excitement that you see from me vis-a-vis you guys, that is, fans collectively. And make no mistake, I'm a fan too. The names that I rattle off cavalierly, are you kidding me? These people are the best in the world, and they're my personal friends. Frank is my golf buddy. I've known Frank for 35 years. He lives 5 minutes from me. Jim Cummings lives 10 minutes from me. These guys have been to my kids' birthday parties. And so I get it, man. I'm a fan. I sit in awe of Frank Welker, every time I've worked with him, which is over 200 now. He still blows me away. But the excitement you see when people come up to me at C2E2 is totally authentic, Jeremy. It is not manufactured. And you guys have given us the gift of seeing how deeply you connect with these characters. So I may be one of the more vocal ones, but all of us, Tom Kenny, Nancy Cartwright, Tress McNeil, Peter, Maurice LaMarche, Jess Harnell, Tara Strong, all of us, Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, we're blown away, totally blown away. And I can't get enough of it. So, yeah, I am very involved because I don't want to miss a moment. It's a huge adjunct to an already very, very wonderful career.
Yeah. Getting back to your book real quick, does it focus just on the cancer and recovery, or does it also look back onto your career?
No and yes. It does not just focus on that. The cancer is kind of the thing to get your attention, but cancer's not and you guys know what I mean. We all know somebody who's been touched with something. It could be as minor as like my dad had some gnarly skin cancer and it was removed and he was fine, or it could be a child who gets a neuroblastoma and he'd been a friend of the family and he or she makes it to about 8 years old and they're gone. And that's brutal. And sadly, cancer, quote unquote, or the fact that somebody has cancer is not a big deal. It's a big deal to the family and to the friends, but in the context of problems in the world, it happens every day. You know that, and I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not chastising you, but we know that. Right now, we're having this conversation, and right now, someone is getting the phone call about their 5-year-old. Someone is getting the phone call about their grandma or their grandpa or their husband or their dad or their mother. And so it's sadly not surprising and not unusual. What makes my story different is the context of my cancer. And that is, I think, what makes my story interesting. And so it draws attention to this wonderful career, but the way my co-writer has written it and structured it makes it very interesting and I think very powerful, because the fact is that I have a much louder voice now being a voice actor than I did for the 30-odd years I had before I almost lost it. My voice is louder now because I almost lost it. And it was not because I abused my voice. It was not because I'm a smoker, not because I'm a partier. As they say in a more crude parlance, shit happens.
Yeah. And
it happened to me. Why not? I wasn't terrified. I was not thrilled, but I was 59 years old when I was diagnosed, and it didn't take me long to, kind of fall back on these wonderful experiences I'd had with all these children. And I used to think at the time that my child was the same age that these children I'd go visit. And it's not just me. I'm not a superhero. In real life, I play them on TV, like they say. But we all do it. And, you know, athletes do it. Famous people do it all the time, and nobody draws attention to it, and they shouldn't. It should go with the territory. It should be something that we do. We're incredibly fortunate.
Right.
But when I got the call, I kind of chuckled because I already had taken a few punches. And honest to God, even if the doctors had said, look, you better go home and get your stuff in order because this is pretty nasty and you're on your way out. I had nothing about which to be sad. I mean, you know, my family, yeah. But from the practical aspects, my wife had great insurance. My son was grown and married. I'm sure it would have, you know, bothered them a bit. But they're going to be fine, you know, in terms of all the ways that mattered, apart from emotional, right? It's just, that's tough. Well, that life is tough. It's tough for a lot of people. But the first thing I thought of was, wow, there's that old axiom that we make plans and God laughs, you know.
Yeah.
My ego was big enough for about 5 minutes to go, oh, wow, God's, you know, as if God had the time, he or she had the time to sit down and say, hey, let's really screw with Rob Paulsen today. Let's give him throat cancer and see how he reacts. So I'd like to think that I reacted pretty well. And I'm through it now. I'm not the same. In some ways, I'm better. But I now have a great story and the celebrity, if you will, quote unquote, to have people interested in it. And so that's where we are. But yeah, the book, and I'm anxious for you guys to read it. It highlights a lot of really cool aspects of a glorious career. I mean, that's not even hyperbole. It's been pretty remarkable, and it continues to be. And the cancer in there contextualizes all of it, and I think it makes for a very interesting story.
Cool. Well, I mean, I've pre-ordered not only the paper book, but the Audible version, which I saw that you actually narrated.
Oh, I do. And my son, Ash, wrote the foreword and does the audiobook forward as well. It's pretty cool.
Cool. How is that different from like regular voice acting? You know, I imagine narration is a little bit different.
Boy, that is an excellent question, and I don't believe I've ever been asked that. So thank you. It's a lot different because I've never thought of myself as a character, quote unquote. Trust me, there are many people alive, my wife included, who'd say, "Oh, Rob is a total character." Trust me.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys know already. I haven't shut up for 20 minutes that we've been chatting, 25. So Rob is, to be sure, a character. However, the characters that inhabit Rob's head are created and accessed in a different way. And I have to say that when the audiobook company, Tantor Audio, booked the studio time for me to do my audio version of Voice Lessons, they booked it for 4 days, and it was like 6 hours a day. And again, it was because I don't do audiobooks. There are actors who do it on a very high level, and I didn't disrespect them before, but I definitely have a healthier respect because I didn't know what I was in for. Mm-hmm. It's quite different. Reading my story was fascinating to me. I really enjoyed it, but then again, that's because of Mike Fleeman, my co-writer. He constructed the book to make it interesting, but it's quite exhausting. Just reading my life and words that were not, with few exceptions, but there are places in the book where Yakko and Dr. Scratch and Sniff and Pinky and I think Carl Wieser interact with Rob. So it's kind of fun to have Rob talk with Carl. It's kind of weird, but even the guy who was doing the recording started to smile and got a little bit freaked out. It was neat, but it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And I have to say that doing my acting work is tiring, but in a different way. I get tired just from the excitement of being creative. When I'm just parroting my own writings, it's just kind of tiring. And so I get it. I would get places where I would have the same phrase that I just could not get through. And so I just chuckle and say, give me 5 minutes to have some water here and get my bearings. I go back into it, I'll be fine. But I'll be damned, I used every minute of the time they booked. So lesson learned. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I'm a big audiobook fan, so I know it's a performance, but it's a different type of performance from
It is,
acting.
and I learned I am not a big audiobook fan, only because I listen to sports, I listen to news, I listen to music. I'm a singer before I've done anything. I was a singer before I moved to Hollywood, and that was one of the ostensible reasons for getting me out here. But I am going to start listening to more audiobooks because the experience was very enlightening and quite exciting. And so far, the people who produced the book really liked it. And I think I offer a very unique perspective simply because of what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So can we talk a little bit about your career? Like one of the things, like I mentioned, you were on Transformers playing a couple aerial bots and a few other characters. We've heard from other voice actors about hijinks in the studio. Do you have any particular funny stories from working on Transformers?
I wish I did. And the only reason I don't is because, honest to God, Jeremy, virtually every session I've done, which is now in the thousands, thank you very much, has been totally joyful. I mean, what is there not to be joyful about? I go to work every day with people I've chosen to hang out with, the people we've already enumerated: Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, Kevin Michael Richardson, Frank Welker, Wally Burr, Charlie Adler, Greg Berger. They're all my friends, and that's not even with a small F. These guys are my friends. They're all on my phone. These guys and girls, I can call them up right now. They'll pick up my call. I'm going to meet them for lunch later, whatever. And so G.I. Joe and Transformers were the first cartoons I ever did. I think that my most fond memories of those episodes were that's where I got my vocal cords wet, as it were, right? I jumped in with both feet because I was primarily an on-camera talent in those days. That I would do, TV stuff, St. Elsewhere, Hill Street, MacGyver, lots of commercials, movies, on-camera stuff. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do animation. It was just when I moved to Hollywood, 1978, and I didn't get my SAG card till 1979, and I didn't start doing cartoons till about 1983 or 4. Cartoons were still relegated primarily to Saturday morning on the 3 networks. So there was not nearly the product available for which producers needed voice talent when I moved here. So that means that there were a handful of actors doing it all.
Yeah.
However, when the opportunity arose, I jumped at it, not to replace the on-camera stuff. It was in addition to, dude, I just want to work. And are you kidding me? Cartoons, let's try this out. So I go there and I think, oh my God, I met the new people who have turned out to be legends, like Charlie Adler, like Peter. Frank was already a legend.
Yeah.
But there are people now who are just starting out. Greg Berger, Charlie, we were all starting out at the same time. And I'm surrounded by these people. Charlie Adler, you poke him with a stick. I just saw him 2 days ago. You poke him with a stick and he makes you laugh.
Yeah, I just re-listened to your podcast with him and Greg Berger and Neil Ross, and it was hilarious.
Oh, my God. Well, then Jesus Christ, these people are so funny and so smart. And the first thing I noticed was, holy shit, Rob, this is the gig. Nobody cares what you look like. Mm-hmm. And at, 28, 29, nobody cared what I looked like. It wasn't about being the average-looking Caucasian boy next door who's 5'10" and 160 pounds. And now, at 63, at 5'10" and 140 pounds, as a result of my little tap dance with cancer, nobody still cares what I look like. Even Steven Spielberg, Hulu, Amblin, and Warner Brothers don't care. All they know is that I'm Yakko. I'm Pinky, and I can still do it. Now, how great is that?
Yeah.
So you can make the argument that my career would have been pretty much cut short or drastically changed if it were just related to on-camera stuff. So that was my best memories. Those were my best memory. It was about going, oh my God, light bulb, dude. Keep working on this aspect of the business. And then about 6 or 7 years later, I made the conscious choice to say, you know what? I think I'm going to jump with both feet in this voiceover gig, man. This is great, and I'm so glad I did. It's been a very wise, happy choice.
That's turned out pretty good for you.
Oh, dude, totally. It ended up with me talking to you. I don't think it could end up much better.
Yeah, well, like you said, you're probably best known as Yakko and Pinky. And Animaniacs was such a unique show. It came out, I think I was in high school when it came out, and it just, I don't know when I first saw it, but it's just, I don't know, it was like a variety show in cartoon form that kind of just drew me to it.
Exactly right. It's exactly what it was. Yeah.
What were your favorite parts to work on? And you had like short sketches, you had longer bits, and you had songs. And what was your favorite part of the show to perform?
It was and is still the music. I don't think there's anything in this world, with the exception of my family and meeting people, that makes me happier than singing. And to be working on a show from the beginning as a clean sheet of paper. I worked on Tiny Toons, where our friend Charlie Adler was Buster, and our friend Tress MacNeille, who was Dot Warner, was Babs Bunny on that show. But the same people, Mr. Spielberg, Tom Ruger, Gene McCurdy, Andrea Romano, all were the usual suspects in creating Tiny Toons. And then they went on to a clean sheet of paper, and I got to be there at the very beginning. And now, to this day, when my friend Randy Rogel, who wrote most of the songs that you guys know, when we travel with Animaniacs in concert around the country, sometimes with Randy and me in a piano, sometimes with Randy and me in a small band, when I'm up singing, Tunisia, Morocco, Uganda, Angola, Zimbabwe, Djibouti, Botswana, people just love it. And it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So it's the music. Yeah.
And I loved that you guys actually updated that song a few years ago, added some nations, probably took some away.
Isn't that great? That was Randy wrote that too. And as I kind of half jokingly, because he's so incredibly skilled and his talent is so prodigious. But for your listeners who don't know, and I'll knock it out for you, this is great. Most of you guys probably know that song where Yakko sings All the Nations of the World. Well, obviously the world has changed. And Randy, our fearless songwriter, came to my rescue because people say, Mr. Paulsen, that song isn't relevant anymore, and I want to smack him. And so he's come up with a new lyric. So now it's Montenegro and Bosnia Herzegovina. The Soviet Union is gone. South Africa, Georgia, Moldova, Latvia, Belarus, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. Then there's Tajikistan too. Turkmenistan, Kurdistan, Armenia, Tangopalu, Lithuania, Serbia, Kosovo, U.S. Samoa, the Balkans, Brunei, Macau and Crimea, then Eritrea, Ukraine and Estonia, His Macedonia, New Caledonia, Eastern Slavonia, Ivory Coast and Cape Verde, Andorra, the Solomon Islands, Dubai. How about that?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just crazy, and I love doing it, and it just makes everybody happy.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Hulu revival. There hasn't been a lot of news since they announced, but I'm guessing you guys are going to be returning.
Well, let me put it this way. I think there will be a fancy-schmancy announcement from Warner Brothers relatively soon to that effect. Okay. And at this time, if I were in Washington right now, I would be in a Senate subcommittee hearing, and I would be saying the following. I can neither confirm nor deny.
All right.
So that's with a big fat cartoon wink. Take that as you will.
All right. Do you think it'll be at New York Comic Con? Because I'll actually be there for a couple of days, and maybe I can track down some people.
Actually, it will. I don't know. I won't be at New York Comic Con, but I will be in New York and New Jersey the following week because my book drops on the 8th, and Comic Con is over, I think, on the 6th, 5th or 6th, but my book drops on the 8th, and I'll be in Manhattan at the Strand Bookstore, which is the largest bookstore in Manhattan, on October 10th. Mm-hmm. And Kevin Conroy, myself, and Kevin's going to host the event, and I will be there signing my book, Voice Lessons, at the first official signing at the Strand. And so Batman himself is going to be there to help us, and my co-writer, Mike Fleeman, and myself will be there at the Strand autographing books. So if you're in New York, if you're in Manhattan and New Jersey in bookends at Gosh, I don't remember but just look up
Yeah.
Bookends, one word, in New Jersey, and I will be there the following Sunday. I think that's the 13th or the 12th. But have a look there. And so for your listeners who are in the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area, come on out to Bookends on the Sunday, or on the 10th at the Strand in Manhattan, and hang out with Yakko, Batman, and a kick-ass writer. We'll have a ball.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll look all those up and make sure they're in the show notes so people can
Thank you.
see them. And my co-host Charles was happy to hear and recognize you as a character on the new DuckTales series, which is another show like Ninja Turtles, where you've done voices for both versions. And
yes,
how does it compare coming back to work on a show that's like a revival of a show that you did years ago, and where maybe many of the people working on the show enjoyed it as kids themselves?
God, you know what? That's exactly right. And it is fantastic. It's a little surreal in the coolest way. When I was Donatello in the 2012-2016 version of Ninja Turtles, and I was sitting next to Sean Astin, who was Raphael, and Greg Sipes, who was Michelangelo in that iteration. And the first time we recorded, for the first 2 episodes, it was Jason Biggs before he had to move on, and ultimately Seth Green replaced him as Leonardo. But it was surreal to sit there and start chatting as a different turtle. Fantastic. It was just wonderful. And you're right. The people who made that iteration, Ciro Miele and Brandon Alman, were turtle geeks from the time they were your age, in high school. And so they were the ones now who had the purse strings and were making turtles. It was so cool to watch them freak out on the other side of the glass when I started talking. And I am now directing the latest incarnation of the show called Rise of the TMNT. And every now and then we'll have actors come in who will have voiced famous characters from the youth of the folks writing and producing that version of the show. And everybody from upstairs, in the production department comes down, because I can't, divulge them. You guys will know them when you hear them, and they'll make a big fancy announcement. But it's pretty neat. Mm-hmm. And what was really cool for me was when I was directing the 4 actors who are now the Turtles. Omar Benson Miller, who's Raphael from Ballers. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought. Josh Brenner from Silicon Valley, who's Donatello. Ben Schwartz plays Leonardo from, I think, Parks and Rec. And Michael Smith, who plays Mikey now. Kat Graham, who plays April. What's so lovely is when they walked into the studio, and I said, "Hi, I'm Rob. I'm the director." And of course, they were just very polite, very talented. And it was so cool because we started recording a few lines and took a break for some technical issues. And so Ben Schwartz is on his phone, and I hear over the talkback, he says, "Holy shit! Do you know who this guy is?" Meaning me.
Yeah.
This guy's Raphael. This guy's Donatello. This guy's Pinky. This guy's Yakko. This guy's Carl. And it was so sweet, because they all of a sudden turned into a bunch of 10-year-olds, and they immediately said, "Oh my God, just tell us how you want us to do it." It was great. So it's a pretty lovely position to be in, man. It's never not fantastic.
In recent years, we've talked a little bit about the conventions, but you seem to be paired with Maurice LaMarche at a lot of these shows, and you guys seem to kind of that you are the best of friends, and it kind of comes off. How much fun is it to have someone with him that you are so close to at these shows?
Oh my God, it is exactly what you would probably imagine, maybe even better. There's nothing cooler than to be. I said this the other day. I was with Tress and Jess and Maurice, and I wonder what that must have been. And I looked at them. I was giving them copies of my book. I've gotten a box of them to sign as an early thing from my publisher, some giveaway. And So I gave my friends, a copy, and it was, they of course are just the sweetest people in the world, and they were among a very few people I told about my cancer, because I didn't need it to share with everybody except people who needed to know.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, because we were working on stuff together. And they're like my family. And they were so generous and so gracious. And it's nothing short of miraculous to be able to look around and say, I've known these people for a generation, in some cases longer. I've known Tress McNeil for 40 years, since she's been a cocktail waitress. She is now the single most prodigious voice talent in the history of Hollywood. Period. End of story. And to be able to share that and watch their stars rise has been a miracle. And then when Mo and I go on the road, and we look at each other all the time and go, can you believe this? The people who come up with their stories of Pinky and the Brain and what it got them through, sometimes it's servicemen and women who have been deployed to Iraq and the Middle East and have seen the absolute worst of humanity, and they just decompress by watching Pinky and the Brain. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I don't even know how to quantify that compliment, and we share it together. The other night, literally, Tuesday night, Maurice and I were asked by a young podcaster, probably about your age, who has a very successful podcast that he does live from the Improv in Hollywood every week. And he asked Maurice and I to be his guests. And when we were off stage and we had a couple of wireless mics, and Maurice said, Pinky, it is time to take over Hollywood. Are you pondering what I'm pondering? And I said, I think so, Brian. But if Jack's black and Betty's white, is Marvin gay? No. And the audience lost their minds. It was a couple hundred people, not a big room, 150 people, but they lost their minds.
Yeah.
So we went up on stage. Then Tom Ruger, the creator of Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and Freakazoid, joined us. And we did a little back and forth. It was the band, the staff, the waiters, the bartender, everybody. Some of them were crying. And it wasn't, they were just crying, oh my God, I don't know why I'm crying, but I can't stop. Men and women. And it always happens, Jeremy. It's the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, that's what it's like. It's beyond cool. And to do it with people you've had over to your home countless times, you've known them through sickness, health, marriage, divorce, sadness, joy, birth, death. And then to know that ultimately, when we all punch our tickets, we'll leave the world with more laughter than tears. How on earth can it get any better than that? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and in that podcast I'll re-listen to the other day, you closed it saying, like, laughter is the best medicine, and it's so true. It
is, I've always lived that axiom. When I was a kid, that famous monthly magazine called Reader's Digest, that was a big deal. And it was in every doctor's office, and virtually every grandparent had it, the Saturday Evening Post, Life magazine, Time magazine, National Geographic, whatever. And so I'd see them at my aunt and uncle's house, doctor's offices, and at the back of every edition of Reader's Digest, there were a bunch of jokes in print, and it said, laughter is the best medicine. Well, I appropriated that for my own devices, and I ended every one of my 200 plus podcasts by saying laughter is the best medicine. The cool thing is you can't OD and the refills are free. And I'll be goddamned, it's true. And I know it because I'm living it.
Yeah.
It helped me get through my cancer, and I would bet you money there are people listening to this right now and say, boy, you got that right, Rob. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, pal.
Awesome. And before we close out, my Canadian co-host, Daryl, he noted that you were a former hockey player and that you often speak highly of your days playing. And
totally. In fact, I just had an email exchange just yesterday and today with the PR department at the Detroit Red Wings, my all-time favorite hockey team, and the Detroit Tigers. I'm a big sports nut, and being from Detroit, I got to sing the national anthem at Tiger Stadium a while back, and I've sung it out here at Dodger Stadium and at Tiger Stadium. All the on the audience, they asked Pinky, Yakko, Carl Wieser, and Raphael to say play ball at different times. It was great. So you hear, hey, Detroit, play ball. And oh, my God, it was the coolest thing in the world. So now the Red Wings are wondering, hey, can you come out and sing the national anthem as Pinky? Of course I can. Oh, my God. I just love it. So,
Yeah.
that was the only other thing I wanted to be besides an actor was a hockey player. And I learned very early that I had no business trying to make a dime as a hockey player.
Yeah. Well, Daryl wants to know what you think Americans fail to understand about hockey and why many don't give it a chance. Because he keeps trying to get us into it.
Well, it depends on where you live. Hockey
Right.
still is the sport. But wait, God, the number one draft choice 2 years ago, drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, was from Phoenix. The LA Kings, the Anaheim Ducks have all won the Stanley Cup. Last year, the Columbus Blue Jackets, for God's sake, almost made a good case for them being in the Stanley Cup. Last year, the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup. So the Canadian hockey teams haven't won the Stanley Cup for years. Hockey's huge down here. Now, is it as huge as football? No.
Yeah.
As baseball? No. And basketball? No. But it's pretty damn big. And there are a lot of people in the cities I enumerated who are crazy about hockey. But I think the biggest thing that people, if I would say there's one thing maybe people don't understand about hockey is they may watch it on TV, and I understand why people say, it's just confusing. And it is, because it's so fast. But that is what the selling point of the game is. And if you go see even minor league hockey, OHL, American Hockey League, East Coast Hockey League, International Hockey League, go see pro hockey league, even semi-pro. It's fast. If you go to an NHL game and you aren't at least impressed with the skill level of these players, men and women players, then you ain't got a pulse. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you don't like other sports. I love football, but they take a break. I understand every play. There's a break. They retool. Sometimes they take a little bit of a timeout. Hockey, oh my God. You try skating full out. You try skating full out for 2 minutes, and you'll be exhausted. And usually a shift lasts for a line, a minute or 2 minutes. And at the end of the night, they have, in a 60-minute game, unless it goes to overtime in the playoffs, you'll have players who skate 25, 30 minutes in a game. Mm-hmm. And when people are trying to run you over and knock your teeth out legally, it takes its toll. It's a fantastic game. I love hockey because it is so fast and it combines the best of, in my view, all games. Smarts, physicality, positional play. You have to be able to shoot, pass, take a punch, give a punch, and I don't mean fight. I mean check. So it's like football, the speed of basketball, the heads-upness of soccer, the speed of a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, 95-100-mile-an-hour hockey puck coming at you. It's a fantastic game. It's the best game in the world to me. And I know because I played it from the time I was 8 till a couple of months ago. It was the last time I played because I don't have time right now.
Yeah.
But it is a wonderful game. And remember, it's the only game that the equipment is sharpened. How's that for something that'll get your attention? There's no other sport in the world in which you sharpen your equipment. So that'll get your attention. I love hockey. Moreover, the people who play hockey at a high level are the most unpretentious, down-to-earth people in the world. I speak from experience. I'm talking about Gordie Howe, Bobby Orr, Stan Mikita, Phil Esposito, Joe Watson. They're the nicest, coolest people in the world, and I'm so thrilled to have hockey players as personal friends.
Awesome. Well, I guess closing this up, wanted to note, cancer, like you said, has probably affected everyone in some form. I lost my dad to brain cancer. My co-host Daryl lost his dad to the same kind that you had.
I'm so sorry, and I get it, and God bless you both. I get it, my friend. And thank you, both of you, for having me on to tell my story, because they're not always sad endings, but I would submit that you have nothing but joyful memories of your respective dads, mm-hmm. and despite the cancer. And I would also submit that even though the cancer took them, that they fought the good fight, and the example that they set for you is something that you'll take and share with your friends and family, because even though some people don't make it, the fight they put up is what it's about. It's about getting up. It's about getting up until you can't anymore. Yeah. And that is the lesson. And whether it's cancer or just life, it's about, getting the, up. and so your dad showed you that, and that's a big deal, my friend.
Yeah. So we wanted to thank you also for sharing your story with us. We're so happy that you did overcome, and we look forward to reading and listening to your book.
Thank you, pal. It is a privilege to be in this position, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm very grateful, and I look forward to seeing you again in person. Yep. And I hope you like the book. Let me know, and we'll talk again.
All right. So thanks again to Rob Paulsen for coming on and talking with me. This was, as I believe I mentioned it in the interview, a bucket list for me. I've gone by the username online as Yakko or some form of Yakko since the BBS days, like 95, 96. So this was beyond amazing for me. If you want to buy his book, as I mentioned, I have links in the show notes. You can get from Amazon. You can get it paperback, Kindle, or Audible. And as we mentioned, he is narrating the Audible version, which is awesome. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention our friend Jim Simonic's cancer charity, Electronic Saviors, and the Respect the Prime project, which we've been very supportive of since the beginning. It's great work. He's raised over $70,000 for cancer research and cancer charities. And if you want to get some good music and also support cancer research, go to distortionprod.com and check that out. And there's also a link to that in our show notes. So once again, thank you so much to Rob Paulsen for coming on. And we will see you next time on Transmissions Alt Mode.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Transmissions. But just because this episode is over doesn't mean the Transformers fun has to stop. Join us and other Transformers fans on our Discord chat server by visiting transmissionspodcast.com/Discord. If you would like to learn more about how you could support the Transmissions Podcast, just visit transmissionspodcast.com/support. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week.